The opinions expressed on this program represent the viewpoints of individual authors or contributors and do not necessarily reflect those of Troy University. This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, I'm really glad to have one of my favorite people in the legislature in Alabama politics with me today. And I'm very honored to have the Speaker of the Alabama House of Representatives, Nathaniel Ledbetter, who is from DeKalb County, the most beautiful part of Alabama. I know I'm from the Wiregrass, and I like our area, but all we got is flat land and pine trees. If y'all ever been up to his neck of the woods in the fall of the year, ain't nothing like it.
It's gorgeous. Yeah.
It really is. Nathaniel, you born and raised in DeKalb?
I was, yeah. I spent my whole life there, raised my family there, and now they're raising their family there. So it's we feel blessed to live in the area. Certainly got a lot of folks around us, good people, and good people all across the state. But we certainly are blessed to be from Northeast Alabama.
I bet you when you first ran, having roots like that, I'm from a county. Your county's bigger than mine, than Pike, but my mama and daddy's people had been from that county for over 100 years. I bet you had old relatives who got you votes from the grave, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, the Ledbetter family is one of the first families in what was the territory of Alabama.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What year did they come?
Well, I'd have to look back at
before the Civil War.
Before the Civil War, yeah. I've got
DeKalb?
Well, it wasn't in DeKalb. It actually was in Marshall. There's actually a Ledbetter Holler in Marshall County where they settled. And it's kind of odd.
Where'd they come from? The Carolinas?
Carolinas.
Everybody, my folks did
That's
too.
That's right. Yeah, most of the people that settled in Alabama did. So that was kind of strange. My family grew up right on top of Grant Mountain, just right above where they settled. And now I'm probably, the way the crow flies, less than 10 or 15 miles.
Do you live outside the city limits?
No, I actually live in Rainesville, which is in DeKalb, and I was mayor of Rainesville, at one time.
I'd forgotten that. But tell me about how you first got into politics. How long were you mayor of Rainesville? Did you run for mayor or you on the city council?
No, I was on the city council for 3 terms.
For 12 years you were on the city council?
Yeah.
How old were you when you got elected to city council?
I was 23 years old.
So you got into politics early. I didn't realize that.
I did, yeah. I got into it early. It's just one of those things that
23, you got elected to city council?
Yeah.
Were there 5 councilmen?
Yeah.
In Rainesville?
5 councilmen and a mayor.
Well, how big is Rainesville? About 20,000?
No, it's not near that big. Now they're close to 6,000. At that time, they probably were a little bit close, probably 4,800, 5,000. Now they've grown. So.
Oh, your mom and daddy, were they live when you first ran?
Yeah, they were.
They're not living now, though?
They're not. No, they've passed since. But when I was elected to the city council and mayor, they were both alive then. Yeah.
They like you getting into politics? They care?
They never said much about it, really. They were from the generation where just making a living and getting by was the most important thing, and
they didn't care where you ran.
They didn't care. It's like all parents. They supported me. Whatever I wanted to do, they was going to support me. So.
Did you have like a people when you first ran? Even maybe when you got in the county wide. I bet you had people say, I vote for you because your granddad didn't.
Oh, yeah.
And your great
well,
so that's what I'm getting around to say.
A lot of it, yeah. And a lot of it because, everybody knew Dad or Mom, and they'd say, I watched you, I watched you grow up. Or
what church you go up in?
Broadway. I mean,
Methodist Baptist?
It's Baptist, yeah. So we.
And that was where you grew up in that church?
Yes, that's where I grew up. My wife grew up in First Baptist.
Is she from there, too?
She is. We were in high school together.
Were y'all high school sweethearts?
Yeah.
Were y'all?
Kind of, sort of. Yeah, I was in high school and she had just got out, so I guess that counts, right? Yeah, we were. We grew up together. Of course, I knew her family and never, really thought about dating. And then once we did, it was something that was special. And so we've
What's
had
your
a good
wife's
life.
name?
Teresa.
And she comes down with you all the time?
She does. She comes with me most of the time, and we got a place here in town, and certainly have to be down here more than we used to since we become speaker. And
did you buy a place when you rent a place when you first got here, or after you became speaker?
After I became speaker.
Because you had to be here all the time.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. We, like everybody else, we first got here, we would rent a hotel, and then, so we got something. Since we're down here so much, it makes it a lot handier.
So you served three 4-year terms on the Rainsville City Council. Then you went to mayor. How long were you mayor?
I was just mayor for 2 years.
Then you ran for this legislative seat?
No, I got an opportunity where I worked at to go into management. And I couldn't do both. And I knew if I did that, I could retire early. And so that's what we chose to do. And then, when we retired, we ran for the
So you
House.
retired from your profession and then ran for the legislature. What
That's
year
right.
did you come to the House?
2014.
2014. Who were some of those people that are in leadership and came in your class?
We know Will Ainsworth, the
came
lieutenant
in that
governor,
20
came in
He
that
was your
class.
neighbor too.
He was, yeah. And Will and I have always been close friends.
Neighboring districts,
Yeah, that's right. And we kind of, I guess that's the reason we become close, because when we were both running as freshmen, we talked a lot before we got elected because we were so close together geographically. So Danny Garrett certainly is one of them. Has done a really good job.
He came with you in 14.
He
He's
did.
chairman of the
He
Ways
did.
and Means.
Anthony Daniels, the minority leader,
yeah.
came in 14. So we had a really good class that year. Of course, we got some of them moved up and done well, like Ainsworth. Matt Friday, which we talked about him today. Our prayers certainly with him and his family. We love Matt and his family, and
He was in that class too.
he was in that class. Judge Hill's in that class.
Yeah. He left his circuit judgeship to run for the
That's right.
legislature.
He did. He's been a great member. He chairs the judiciary for me, and
That's
I
proper
couldn't-
too.
He does a great job. He does.
Nathaniel, you came in 14, and what was it an open seat?
It was an open seat. Todd Greason was in that seat at the time and chose to run for the Senate. So that's how that happened. And
Is your district? The Cab's got more than enough for a House seat.
it does. Yeah,
You have to give some of your people up in the
I
Cab.
did. Yeah, well, I've got about probably 70% of DeKalb. I'm one of the few legislatures in the state house that's just got one county, but I've got about 70% of DeKalb. DeKalb's grown. I mean, it's become it's pretty populated.
Building
now.
community for Huntsville. Isn't it?
Well, for Huntsville and also Chattanooga. I mean, in the north part of my county borders Georgia, so
So are you right? DeKalb is on the line. I thought Jackson bordered.
It is. Jackson's on the line, and DeKalb is too. Now,
Okay.
Jackson does Tennessee. They border Tennessee, and they may. I guess the way ours is all Georgia. So we go right up to the Georgia line.
Speaking of that, Mr. Speaker, you and Senator Livingston have started that 4th of July breakfast, which I'm going to come to this year.
Yeah, we
And
look forward to
I came
having
one
you.
of the first ones, and you said I'm going to be able to say a few words and be
Yeah,
live with you in your parade.
That's right.
But it's become the biggest go-to political event in the state. There used to be events like Mule Day and Winfield and the Terry family reunion up around Moulton in Lawrence County. But your thing, those have gone by the wayside, but your thing, y'all have built the biggest go-to event for every political candidate.
Hey, it's amazing. It's
Tell
really
our
amazing.
viewers about how that started.
Well,
what's
the
gonna
thing,
happen this year.
yeah,
Henniger.
in Henniger, Alabama, 4th of July, they do what they call a potato festival. On Sand Mountain, potatoes were king at one time when they started this years and years ago, and so they had that festival there. We had done a breakfast with some friends in that area at a cabin he's got up there, and one year, and we come back next year, we couldn't get everybody in it, So I talked to Senator Livingston. I just left Huntsville and met with Tommy Battle, and we were talking about the breakfast. I said, hey, y'all come over. And so we decided to carry it to the Henniger Park, and it's kind of interesting. I told them we didn't know what we were doing to be, in Livingston, we don't want to be cooking for anybody. But we got up there, and we didn't even have a coffee made when people started coming in.
First year.
Yeah. So, and then it kind of grew from there. We had, 40 or 50 people show up, and then it went to 100, 200. Last year we served over 325 people. Probably had over 400 people, but that was just how many you eat. And of course, they know by how many plates I have. But it's been great, man. It really has, and the support of that community and for that area has been tremendous.
Does it raise funds for anything?
No, it doesn't. We just do it for fellowship and to have a good time and to bring everybody in. I think we were talking today, Lieutenant Governor's never missed one. Tommy Battle, I think, has missed one, the mayor of Huntsville. The Tuberville's been there 2 or 3 times.
Do you get Raby to come over there?
Raby comes every year.
Does he really?
Mac McCutcheon, the former speaker, he's usually there every year. And, of course, we have a number of House members there.
Yeah, everybody comes up after that.
It's fun. It's really
everybody
a
running
good time.
statewide will be there.
Yeah, they will, especially this year. Yeah.
Speaking of that, I tell people this. You know, if Tuberville and Ainsworth run for governor against each other, you are probably the best friend both of them have got.
Yeah.
And you know, what reminds me of that, when Jabbo Wagner, well, I wrote his book, you know, and we were talking at his house one time about that 70 governors race.
Yeah.
When Brewer and Wallace ran against each other, and that divided people.
Yeah.
But you'll have to sit on the fence. You can't get involved. That's bad politics to get involved.
Well, it's true. You know, if you,
But they're your best friend.
They are.
Tuberville stayed in your house when he ran for the Senate.
He did. He stayed in my pool house several times. And we spent a lot of time. And of course, as you know, I co-chaired his campaign. I mean, I helped run his campaign. And of course, Will's one of my closest friends down here. I mean, so it's kind of an odd situation for me. I don't know what's going to happen yet. I mean, nothing's been made public.
No.
So we'll see how that goes.
Nathaniel, let's talk a little bit about the session. This session, I want to commend you, first of all, for taking the bull by the horns last year on the getting the money off of gambling and lottery we should be getting. Didn't do anything this year. But what's been the biggest surprise to you in this session, and what do you think is going to be the biggest success that the legislature has accomplished this year if you had to nail a couple of things down? I'll say this much, it's got to start with the budgets.
Right.
And I got to say this as a commentator and an observer of Alabama politics the last 60 years, that when the Republicans took the legislature majority in 2010, the budgeting has really been very, very good. The frugality and the rainy day funds and not going into proration. So you'd have to start by saying, if you got a good budget, you've had a good session, wouldn't
That's
you
right.
say?
I think that's it. I mean, as you know, you've served. I mean, that's our only constitutional obligation. Is to pass the budgets, and you know, I think we've got them in position. Tomorrow we'll have the ETF on the floor. We'll be finishing it up. I know they're working on the general fund in the Senate. Probably having committee meetings today or tomorrow. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but I think both of them are pretty solid. You know, one thing, and sometimes I get slammed a little bit for being a physical conservative, but I am. I mean, if anybody, we talked about where I grew up on Sand Mountain in DeKalb County. You know, when you're growing up there, you didn't have much of a choice. That's just a way of life. There wasn't much there. There wasn't much income. So I think you grow up that way, you kind of stay that value. So, and my thing, and I always talk, and we just come out of a caucus meeting before I come to see you, but you know, we've always got to be mindful of the money. We've always got to make sure that we take care of it frugal, and so it's taxpayers' money, it's people of this state's money. We need to make sure it's spent appropriately. And I think we've done that, Steve. I think we have. I think, you know, we've put it in the right places. We've saved some, we've put some in new programs, but we've also been physically responsible.
I was on Capitol Journal with Todd Stacy earlier in the week, and he asked me how I thought of the session. I said, it's going to be a successful session because they got solid budgets. And you and your committee chairman have done a really good job of not going overboard and spending all that COVID money and expect it to be there every year. You put some aside, and you know, the Senate deserves as much credit too as the House, because Arthur Orr's been very prudent too.
That's right. He has.
He's been very prudent, and all Britain has, but your committee chairman have worked closely with them.
They have.
Rex Reynolds and do they bring you involved in that in the budget a little bit?
They do, and I appreciate that. Listen, let me say this first of all, Steve. I'm blessed. I mean, I really am. I mean, you got Rex Reynolds as a general fund chair, which is, you know, manager of the whole city of Huntsville.
Right.
You know, and you know what size budget they had.
Yeah.
And then you got Danny Garrett that's all he's done his whole life, been a CFO. So and he's carried 2 different companies public. So to have that kind of quality, and they're just good, solid people, good Christian people. And if you know, if there's changes that I need to know about or something that I need to see, they'll come to the office. And usually we go over line by line, you know, what's going on, what's happening. And I appreciate that. It makes it where, you know, me as speaker, if I get asked a question, I can answer it.
Right.
Which makes it good for me because, you know, in my role, I get asked a lot of questions about the budgeting process and where we're at. So I couldn't be more fortunate than to have the 2 gentlemen, in Danny Garrett and Rex Reynolds, in those positions.
Well, you've got a good team altogether.
We do.
You've got a good committee chairman, like you said, Hill in the Judiciary.
That's right. Jim Carnes in small business. I mean, who could be better than Jim Carnes? He run a business for years, and you know, Joe Lovern does an amazing job as rules chair.
I like old Joe Lovern.
He's a good man, and just has got a good heart. And
He came in 18, I think, didn't he?
he come in the special. He followed
Okay.
Hubbard, if you remember. That's the
You know,
seat he
his
ran.
seat, Nathaniel, has an interesting history. I served with Mr. Pete Turnham. We were seatmates.
Mm-hmm.
And since Mr. Pete served 28 years, and had the record, Lovern followed him, but Lovern would tell you there's only been 3 people in that seat in the last half century.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Ask
right?
him about that seat.
Man, he thought about
he's
that.
only third. There's somebody before Pete. Oh, Hubbard.
That's right.
Hubbard followed Mr. Pete. Mike Hubbard was speaker.
Mm-hmm.
But Hubbard was there about 12 years, 15 years.
That's right.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Hubbard followed Mr. Pete Turnham, and then Joe followed Hubbard. So he said, Steve, there's only been 3 people in this seat in the last 50 years.
How about that?
In that seat over in Lee
That's
County.
amazing. That's
Uh-huh.
pretty amazing. Well, he does a great job. You know,
You know who was in the house with me that I love about it? I forgot his book he wrote, his old
Euclid Rains.
We were in the old Capitol when I was in the freshman legislator, and we moved over to the State House, and it wasn't designed to be a long-term place anyway. I'm glad y'all go ahead and build a regular State House,
Yeah.
but there was a horrible seat behind the pole.
Yeah.
And you could say, I'll take this seat.
Yeah.
It don't matter because Euclid was blind.
Yeah.
I
tell you,
loved him.
Funny story.
He was a witty guy.
He was witty. I got to know him when I was on the city
He was
council.
from Rainsville, wasn't he?
No, he was actually from Marshall County. He's actually
Okay.
just right across the line from DeKalb there. But if you remember,
But he had Rainsville, didn't he?
no.
didn't?
If you remember Ralph Burke, you remember
Oh,
Ralph
yeah,
Burke?
yeah.
At the time had Rainsville, and I had come to Montgomery with them for something we were doing for the city. I'll never forget this. So we're on the way back, and Euclid, when we go through Malfunction Junction there in Birmingham, he tells Bert, he says, I had a great uncle that helped design this.
He knew where he was.
And Ralph told him, so he must have been blind too.
Whatever happened to Ralph? He got out of politics, didn't he?
He did. He's still hanging around. He worked for Jacksonville State University for a number of
didn't know
years and
that.
retired. Yeah,
You know, the speaker when I was named Jimmy Clark loved Ralph Burke.
yeah,
He fell in love with him.
really,
Thought he had a lot of potential,
yeah.
I wrote about this. The only speaker, and I didn't know him, he was way before my time. If you look at the walls of the speakers, there was a speaker named William Beck from DeKalb
That's
County.
right.
He was a lawyer, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Did you ever know him? Or he too
1946.
way before your time?
I knew his family. I knew
Uh-huh.
of his family, and knew, of course, the history of him being. The irony. I think you kind of wonder sometimes. I think, of course, I always have said God puts you where He wants you, and there's a reason. And so when we first got elected, they wanted us to go. So we got an office in the Capitol building. We got one in the State House. The one in the Capitol building is more ceremonial than anything.
In the behind the old State House.
That's right.
Uh-huh,
So
back there.
we were in the Capitol building, and they were doing some pictures for an article that they were doing, and they wanted me to open up a book to be looking at it at my desk, and I did. And it was a journal book, and the speaker at the time was William Beck.
Is that
and
right?
Folsom was the governor.
Big Jim was
And
governor.
that's, of all the books up there, of the hundreds of books that's up there, the one that they pulled out of the shelf and gave to me was the last Speaker of the House from DeKalb County.
In that instant.
That's amazing.
Did you know he was
Amazing.
Speaker when you went to the legislature from DeKalb
I
County?
did. I did. I mean, I think DeKalb has grown some, but it's still a rural county, so it's people knew that. So
Speaking of that, you go way back with Randy Owen.
yeah,
Tell everybody
Randy's
about your
a good friend
relationship
of
with
mine.
Randy Owen. Randy Owen, the famous Alabama lead singer and founder of the band Alabama, is one heck of a great
he's
guy.
a great guy. Yeah,
He's my age. We're about
Yeah.
the same age. We're in the early 70s. And but I've been a big fan of his all my life, and I've always heard great things about him. I've met him on several occasions, and and people talk about his humility.
yeah.
Maybe I have had him on this show.
Yeah.
And we were talking about something, and he was very humble about how he started. I think I asked him, maybe you told me. Have you been on this show before?
I have one time before.
That's
yeah.
where we talked about
Yeah,
it then.
yeah.
Let's talk about it again, because the way you told it was you told me, not him. It was that he didn't think they didn't make any money for about 10 years on the road and everything. He said, I want to buy my wife a nice house.
That's right. Yeah. That's
Tell
the
that story and how he did
No,
it.
it's so they had, of course, they had played at the Bowery in Myrtle Beach for a few years, and right after.
You
he
know
got
all
across.
those boys, all those bands?
I do. I do. You know, Jeff has passed away. And I know Teddy. And
All of them are from DeKalb, aren't
all
they?
of them's cousins. They're all kin to
They're
each
all
other.
cousins,
Yeah.
okay.
And they grew up right there close together. I think that's how they become a band, really. But anyway, they had been doing music for a while, and they'd had a couple of #1 hits, and they still lived in probably a 900 square foot house there right across from his farm.
Talking about Randy and his wife.
Randy and his wife Kelly.
Well, she was from up there too.
No, she's not from there. She's actually a military brat.
Okay.
They moved everywhere. She was all over the place. But met her in Myrtle Beach, and he was telling BMI, which is the songwriting, they get royalties off those songs. I don't think Randy knew that. Or if he knew it, he didn't know how it worked or anything. So the lady from BMI had called him one day and said, Randy, if I had a check for you, what would you do with it? And he said, well, how big of a check? She said, no, this is going to be a really nice check.
What song was it? Do you remember?
Yeah, the first one he come out with, if you remember, was Tennessee River. That was the first #1.
That was where his check came from, Tennessee River?
Well, he had my home's in Alabama, Tennessee River, and I think
Home in
Mountain
Alabama
View.
came first.
Yeah. So anyway, they were. He asked her, said, "Well, what kind of check?" She said, well, "This is going to be a nice check." He said, well, "I'd like to build my wife a house," and she told him, "So you can build your wife a nice house with this check."
Is that right?
And he didn't realize he was going to get that kind of royalties to be able to build his wife a house, and he did. And actually, it's the house they live in today.
It's the house he came from that one thing.
So it's amazing, but the stories he can tell is absolutely amazing.
Y'all were really good friends.
Yeah, it was an honor for me. I mean, if he's got something big, he'll call and say, "Hey, but so he got honored a couple of months ago now. BMI, which is Songwriters Association, had honored him with the Icon Award, which is the highest award that you can receive in country music for writing music. So he called me and said, "Hey, listen, I want you to go with me." And I said, "Well, I had a business. I had all the business people with me at lunch in Birmingham. I mean, I asked them to come. Was talking about SLC, which we're going to have in Birmingham, and
That's right.
trying
That's
to talk
big,
with
big
all
as
those
something,
people,
yeah.
And I told him, I said that before the meal come, I said I got to go. I said I can't stay. I've made an obligation, and so then Teresa went to Nashville and was with him, and it was kind of interesting because all the country music stars were
So you
there.
got to go to the ceremony.
I was there with them, so it was just me and Teresa and Kelly and Randy, and then
When was
another
this?
friend.
This year sometime?
It was this year. It's been in the last 3 months, and so it was quite interesting. And I told somebody, the first person I ran into was Jason Aldi, but they were all just like you and I. I mean, they were but everybody was coming to Randy's table and telling him congratulations. So it was quite the night, and I was honored that they asked us to go with them.
Did you have to wear a black tie and everything?
Yeah. So what he told me, this was from him. He said, "You got to wear a tuxedo." He said, "But I ain't wearing one because it's my show. That's my
So he
party."
didn't wear one?
He didn't have a tuxedo on, so I gave him a hard time. But yeah, he said, "You ain't got no choice. You got to wear one." He said, "But I ain't going to. It's my party."
He didn't do it?
Yeah. So, but no, we love him to death. They are special people to us.
They say he has the best black Angus cattle that you
He
can
does.
find.
He does.
Where did he start getting them from?
Well, they started right there on their farm, and they have an auction every year, and he's just grown of course, I think his daughter and son-in-law now does most of the
They make
operations.
money off of it then.
They've got a pretty good operation. The thing about Randy is that he's got a big heart, and
I heard that.
he started the Country Cures Network, if you remember that, several years ago. And to date, they've raised over $1 billion. $1 billion with a B.
Now, what's it for?
It's for the Children's Hospital.
Where? Out of Birmingham?
No, it was St. Jude's.
Oh, the St. Jude's out of Memphis.
Yeah, out of Memphis. So who? Danny Thomas.
Danny Thomas, yeah.
As you remember,
He's raised $1 billion.
Randy,
for that.
with the Country Cures Network. And he started that because Danny had something going on. He couldn't be at one. He asked Randy to go, and Randy just fell in love with what they were doing. And he asked his friends in country music to get involved. And to date, they've raised over $1 billion during the years that they've done it. And that's not counting, the shows he did there in Fort Payne, the June Jam that he gives to so many people. So,
Nathaniel, going back to this session, back to the current session, the budgets are going to be good, but of the session, what do you think the best thing came out of this session is? If you had to, you're proud of other shows.
yeah, I think once we get it finished, we got some work to do still in the Senate. We've passed them out of the House. Our staff worked with the governor's staff on this crime package.
That is going to be big.
That's going to be a big deal. I mean, I think it shows that we still back police officers
And
in the
Rex
state.
handled that back to Bluebill.
He did.
I had him on the show. He talked about it.
Rex did a great job, and I apologize to him because when we put all those bills together, I had to find sponsors, and I tapped Rex to do that bill, but it was because the way he's such a professional.
Well, police chief too,
and was the police chief of Huntsville, so he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah,
and it's kind of surreal. I think today he was in committee with one of those bills, with the blue bill, in the Senate, and he made a comment that I thought it makes reality come to the bill. And he said, the reason I wore this suit that I've got on is because I've wore it to 3 funerals of police officers that's been killed in line
when he was
duty.
Doing the bill, he had that suit on and said that. Boy, I bet that resonated, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean it did. It really did. And I think our staff did a great job with the governor's staff. We got a great package of bills. The Glock switch, it's already been hugely successful. I'd read the report yesterday where they've had 100 arrests just here in the Montgomery County. And I never thought about it, Steve. In my county, in rural DeKalb County, right out of the gate, there's 2 that's arrested there, and one of them got caught with drugs because they were able to arrest him because of the switch.
They got him for drugs too. Off that bill.
Already using it. So I think the other thing is the scholarships. Police officers, I think, deserve opportunity. That we want to retain them, and to do that, we get an opportunity for their children to get last dollar scholarships. I think that's a big deal. So we've got several bills in there that's going to be positive, and I think for us this session, that certainly will be one of them. PBM was a big deal.
I was on with Todd Stacy, and I said, he said, what's the? I said, how that the local pharmacy bill got through for the local, and you coming from a rural county like me, that local pharmacist there, a lot of people's doctor.
That's right.
And they ain't right. They weren't doing them right.
No, and the thing about it is, this, Steve. I mean, we got counties in the state that doesn't have health care. Well, the closest thing they got is their pharmacist.
Exactly.
And I think it's. I wish we had been able to pull something off quicker. I think we'd save more pharmacists.
That surprised me how well that passed.
Yeah.
I was going to say that if you had to give the best things that passed besides the budget, you'd say the crime bills and help the local farmers.
I think so. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. We went through the process with PBM where we put a group together and they studied it all summer. And I talked to Gudger because we knew we had the Blue Cross and the Alpha debate coming up.
Yeah.
So we worked it out. I said, we've worked on this PBM bill, so why don't y'all take it? You know where we're at. You got what we've done. And he had 2 bills already dropped up there. And I said, let us work the Alpha bill and the Blue Cross bill. So we did. We swapped up. They did the PBM. We did and I think sounds like that the health care bill on the floor Tuesday.
Man. Well, Nathaniel, our time's up. It goes by in a hurry.
It does. I've
Appreciate
enjoyed
you
it.
doing this, too.
Folks,
our guest has been the Speaker of the Alabama House of Representatives, Nathaniel Ledbetter from DeKalb County. In his second 4-year quadrennium as Speaker of the House. And we thank him for being with us. And this is the waning days of the session. So he came down here and be with us the last few days of the session. And we'll have him on every year if he'll be willing to come
Absolutely.
on.
I'd love to.
Thank y'all for watching. Thank you, Nathaniel.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate you.
This has been Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, a production of Troy University Television. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Troy University, its administration, faculty, staff, or students.